Okay.
I will be I'll be recording. It can be found on the channel, and we're going to go over customer accounts. Now, usually these coaching calls are 30 minutes.
Okay.
However, I think what you want to do is going to take more than that. So no problem. I'm going to honor that. We will get this done, even if it runs over a little bit. Your other two categories, I think I saw your notes or your email. We can save, and there's plenty of content on the channel already for that.
Okay.
Okay, so I thought we'd go over customer accounts.
Mhm.
I have a couple exercises we're going to do too. We're going to do suitability of customer accounts. So kind of like a game show. I
Okay.
give you a scenario and you tell me what account we think we should open up for this person.
Got it.
Don't get too much of your self-esteem wrapped up in it. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
So just a little game. We also have a little game we'll play about the difference between a traditional and a Roth IRA. Same kind of a thing. We'll play a little game, how they're similar, how they're different. And then the last little game we'll play is a discretion or not discretion. So we're going to give you some scenarios, and then we'll talk about whether it's discretion or not. All right. So right out of the gate, here are our types of customer accounts. We have individual accounts, and you do get tested on transfer on death, right? So they love to give you a scenario like there's an aunt and her nephew is kind of somebody she doesn't trust with funds, but he has creditors, and then she wants to make sure that her nephew gets this money without going through probate. And then you would tell me on the test that we should have the individual account with transfer on death. And then it's also testimony that that's easier to do in the individual account. It most lends itself to that kind of scenario.
Okay.
Now, very, very testable. You have to be able to contrast joint tenants with rights or survivorship with tenants in common. And so a joint tenants with rights or survivorship, both parties own 100% of that account. There's no fractional interest. The decedent share goes to the surviving party, which will be important. If that other person needs access to those funds, it's available to them.
Right.
With joint tenants with rights or survivorship, either party can act. Either party can act in the account. And I can't, shield the account from one of the other parties, right?
Right.
If it's a husband and wife and, the husband wants to know what's going on, or wife, I got to be able to tell them that. And the other thing is all the checks would be cut to the title of the account. So, Mr. Jones calls me and says, "Hey, Dean, just cut that check to myself. My wife and I have discussed it." And I said, "Well, I hate to, get in the middle of something, but no." That says, "Mr. and Mrs. Jones, that's how that check is getting cut." Both parties would have to sign any documents. So if they're endorsing a certificate or something like that, we'd need both signatures. Tenants in common, very testable. There is a fractional interest. There is a fractional interest. It could be 80-20. It could be 50-50. It could be more than one party. And then the very testable question is, this decedent share goes to their estate or beneficiary. Very testable. Now, types of business accounts. We have sole proprietors. I don't know how many people conduct businesses as sole proprietors anymore. And if they are, I'm not so sure they would rise to the level of opening up brokerage accounts. But, the sole proprietorship, the sole proprietor of the business are one and the same. I don't think you're going to see any questions about a sole proprietorship, except there's a legacy question about they could have a Keogh retirement plan, but I haven't had anybody tell me they've seen that in practice in a long time. Partnerships, we need a copy of the partnership agreement, and we need to be able to know which partner has the authority to trade the account, right? So we need a partnership resolution. If that partnership is going to engage in margin, the two basic types of accounts we have are cash accounts and margin accounts. That has to be specifically permitted within that partnership agreement. Same thing for a corporation, whether it's a C Corp or an S Corp or a limited liability corporation. We're going to need a copy of the corporate charter. We're going to need a resolution saying which partner or managing member is authorized to engage in transactions. And if there's going to be margin, that again has to be specifically permitted within the corporate charter. In other words, some corporations may or may not be allowed to engage in margin. Fiduciary means we're acting for the benefit of someone else. And so if we're opening an account for a trust, we need a copy of the trust agreement. And then the trustee is typically going to either have full power of attorney or limited power of attorney. By the way, that doesn't just exist in a trust. Full power of attorney, it means not only can I make investment decisions for you, I can withdraw monies and securities from the account. Limited power of attorney means all I can do is make investment decisions. You know, again, it's not only trust accounts, it's just powers of attorney in general. I saw this show, it had nothing to do with our business, and they were following a rookie around in the NFL, and he bumped into a retired player, and he said, "Do you have any advice for me as a rookie?" And out of the blue, the guy said, "Never give your investment professional full power of attorney." And I said, "Ooh, say it ain't so." Not bueno, not bueno. Very testable, very testable. So we have uniform transfer to minors accounts, one custodian, one minor per account. That's very testable. So you got multiple donors, but only one minor, one custodian. So Dean Tenney as custodian for Aaron Tenney, UTMA, Nevada. Irrevocable. You can't change your mind. You know, if you want to be dictating terms from the grave to some kid, you need a trust account, not an UTMA account, because when they reach the age of majority, we can stipulate up to the age of 25. That's testable. We have to re-register it to them. Indefeasible means you can't destroy the gift. Now, UTMA, you are allowed to have real estate. I don't think you'll see that. And then I told you that up to age 25 is testable. States, there's 49 states that use UTMA. UTMA, Uniform Gift to Minors Act. The only difference really is the age of majority is 18 or 21, depending on the state. Again, a legacy question. I haven't had anybody tell me they've seen anything other than UTMA in a long, long time. Now, very testable as well, what you can and can't do in the kid's custodial account, right? You can't do margin, so very testable, no margin in that account. That's true of most retirement plans as well. This idea that leverage is, you know, dangerous. You make money twice as fast, but you lose money twice as fast as well. Okay, here's the game I promised you. It's a married couple. They come into your office, say, "Hey, Trina, we would like to be able to conduct a business in our account. What kind of registration might you recommend to a married couple concerned about ease of service and transfer?"
Ease of service and transfer. Joint tenants with rights of survivorship.
Excellent, excellent. Trust your first, by the way, as a test taker, always trust your flash response. Your flash response is always your best response. Now, the second thing I would tell you is that, yeah, you go, okay, well, yeah, husband or wife either can act and I can transact business with them. Yeah, that sounds like the way to go. Sounds like the way to go. And remember the other testable point? Doesn't have to be a married couple, but that's where I see it most often when I was a practitioner. But remember, the other testable point is that the deed and share goes to the surviving party. Right. All right, let's try it again. So you're 1-0, 100%. A single person who wants to designate a beneficiary for the account.
Transfer on death was my
Right
first.
on, right on. Good job. You're 2-0. You're 2-0. A wealthy couple who have established a trust.
Trust account.
Yeah. So by the way, Trina, you don't get many aim and shoot point click questions. So when you do, I get people that get an easy one. They go, "Oh my God, it can't be." So just be careful. You know, when people are hunting for the first time, there's a concept for new hunters who call it buck fever. Buck fever is when they see the buck and then they can't. So good job. Yeah. A brother and sister are putting money aside to buy a house for their parent.
Putting money aside to buy a house for their parent. First thought was trust account.
Well, I don't think they want to get that involved. I mean, this is a tough one because, they might, it depends how much money. I mean, if they're, the Rockefellers perhaps, but, for just, average retail investors who come into our office, tenants in common.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, I think that one's kind of, individual owner. So key pivot thing, individual owner of a small unincorporated business.
Sole proprietor.
Yeah, right on. Good job. So that'll get it done. That will certainly get it done on your test, right? 4 joint owners of an unincorporated business.
Unincorporated business.
Yeah, I tell you, it's like learning a foreign language, isn't it? I always like such. assuming you know the foreign language, it's, they easier questions, Sometimes I have attorneys and they say, Dean, if I don't pass this, it's going to be embarrassing. I go, absolutely. Because if anybody's supposed to understand the legalese, it should be you, right?
And
So,
when I saw the four joint owners,
yeah, so more than one, we're conducting business, myself and three others together. What form might we consider for that?
the partnership?
Excellent, excellent indeed.
Okay, question.
Mhm.
Unincorporated.
Yeah, what that means, that's kind of, incorporation means kind of like you're doing a corporation. And remember, partnership, there's going to be a flow through of the tax consequences.
Right.
So that is a key kind of legal term, this idea of unincorporated. Are
Okay.
you incorporated or incorporated? For example, I just had somebody who wants to do some business with me. And they said, Dean, are you incorporated or are you not? And I said, well, I'm not incorporated as it relates to this discussion we're having. And they said, well, Dean, we've taught the legal and we can't do business with an individual. So
Okay.
you're going to have to incorporate.
Okay.
Okay, I said, okay, for enough money, okay, I'll do it. If that's what it takes to get paid. So I now I have to decide, right, on what kind of structure do I want.
Mhm,
In my case, I decided to set up an LLC,
mhm,
right, make myself the managing member. So, I'm not going to do business as a sole proprietor because, that would just be foolish, right? Because of liability and stuff like that.
mhm.
All right, let's go qualify. Now, as a test taker, what we're concerned with when we hear the word qualify is what we want that to mean is not so much that you've qualified with the Department of Labor and the IRS and the Department of Treasury, but what the takeaway from that is, as test taker, is we're typically using pre-tax money we've never paid taxes on.
Always get mixed up.
Right. So when we're talking about a traditional IRA, for example, I say, Trina, I'll use myself. I say, let's say I made $80,000 this year. And I know you're surprised that Dina's over 50. I know I don't look it, but I am. And so I'm allowed to put 7,500 into an IRA. And so now my gross income goes down from 80 to whatever, 80 minus 7,500 is. And so that 7,500 is money I haven't paid taxes on. And so that's really kind of a key kind of thing for us as a test taker. We're talking about types of accounts, but remember on the other side of these types of account questions are tax consequences. And what we mean by that is if it's money that I haven't paid taxes on, almost always all the money coming out is going to be taxable. Now, whenever Dean says almost always, that means, there's probably an exception, coming somewhere on that, right? All right, so we're going to talk about traditional versus Roth. We're going to play that same game again. How are they similar? How are they different? We're going to differentiate between defined benefit and defined contribution plans. How are those different? And we're going to talk about some test questions there as well. All right, a traditional IRA. So test question number one is you have to have earned income to fund an IRA. You can't fund an IRA with unearned income. Unearned income is stuff, I don't know why we call it unearned income. It's like my hazarding my capital, making my investments. So, if I make $20,000 buying and selling a stock, that isn't earned income. So it's got to be me working for money. I think of my earned income as my paycheck income. Now, the exception to that would be for a non-working spouse. Now, all of these retirement plans, one thing they all have in common, and that's why retirement plans are popular, is you get tax deferred growth. That's true of all of them. No margin, no shorts, no uncovered options, no naked calls, for example. No munis, that would be unsuitable, right? The two major impediments to investment success are taxation and inflation. And I say, Trina, in your retirement plan, you've already beat taxation. So you don't need a muni in there. That muni would be a waste of its tax-free income. That would be for you in your personal account if you're rich and you're in a high tax bracket. Yeah, surprisingly enough, that's unsuitable. It's a test question. It's unsuitable to put a muni into an IRA. But more surprising to me is how many people, when they do surveys, have done that. That by the way, I saw a mutual fund that surveyed their own customers and called them up and said, hey, what are you doing? Why are you in a tax-free fund in your retirement plan? Neat that they reached out. And then they were sharing what these people thought. I don't know where they got this stinking thinking
Hmm.
Some of the, oh, I thought I could put it in there tax-free, and crazy. So we don't do that. Now, you're going to get a deduct for most investors. Like I said, that's the point here, is it's going to come off your adjusted gross income. It depends on your income. So there is a phase in of deductibility. They won't get into that on the test, but it's based on how much you make and whether you have access to a qualified plan through your spouse or your employer. So the way we say that is it's means tested. Withdrawals are very testable, all of them, with one testable exception. All of them have a 10%, well, all of them have a 10% penalty if you withdraw this money before you're 59 and a half. Now, the exception you see here would be a hardship withdrawal, disability, things like that. They don't really get into that. And then when you withdraw, it's going to be taxed at ordinary income. And then the IRS wants to make sure they get their money on the hands on that money at some point. So, at 73, you're going to get a nasty letter that says you have X number of years to live and you need to start drawing down on your retirement plan. When I was a practitioner, it was always funny because when I had a client who'd get this, I either had two responses from clients who received this letter. One, half my clients would call me and say, "Oh my God, Dean, I'm going to die in X number of years." And then another half of my customer would call and say, "I'm not dying." But they could probably be a little more tactful with this, RMD notification. To say, you're going to take this. Now, what you have to be able to do on the test is contrast the traditional IRA with a Roth IRA. So very testable, be able to contrast the two. So contributions are from earned income up to a maximum. Same with the spousal option. Same tax deferred growth. Again, no margin, no uncovered options, no munis, no collectibles, no tangibles. Taxation of contributions, there's no deduction. So that's really key as a test taker, because that means you're using after-tax money. In other words, you've already paid taxes on the money that's going into this thing. And it is, again, means tested, meaning not everybody is going to be allowed to have a Roth. I think it should be legislative risk. This thing is so sweet that I think Congress, what Congress giveth, Congress can taketh away. And Trina, Senator Roth is no longer with us. Senator Roth is the guy who came up with this idea. If you're a senator and you come up with the idea, we name it after you. So sometimes I get foreign test takers, they go, "Well, Keogh." I go, "No, that was Senator Keogh. He came up with that idea." Roth and a Roth, right? 10% penalty again. And boy, this is sweet and testable. Sweet and testable.
I get
A
those.
big contrasting point between the traditional IRA and the Roth is no taxes at withdrawal, no RMD. Now, I don't want to cloud your mind, but Mitt Romney, when he left Bain Capital, he rolled over his IRA, his traditional retirement plan, into a Roth. So that means that he doesn't have to worry about income limits or means tested. Anyways, he rolled over a fortune into that thing. It's one of the largest Roths I've ever heard of. It's, when he ran for president, it was like $100 million. It's probably more now. But anyways, he was telling a story about when he was running for president, he asked his wife how much he could take out of their Roth IRA, run for president, and she said he could take $40 million out of it. Wow. Now, this drives my progressive friends nuts, because that's 40 million and he ain't paying taxes on it. Taxes. Right. So that's the testable point about those Roths. Huge. There's all kinds of guys who are, build their entire business on Roth IRAs. I had a guy out in Vegas call me, and he was here for a seminar. I guess he signed up for some Roth IRA, work marketing workshop. So very testable. Okay. So now we're going to play that game again we talked about. We said it's very testable, able to contrast a Roth with a traditional IRA. So we're simply going to go through this, and we're going to put a check mark, and we're going to say, does a traditional IRA have tax-free growth? I would prefer that says tax-deferred growth, but oh well. And does a Roth? And so what say you? Do one of these or both of these offer tax-free or tax-deferred growth?
Tax-free growth. If it goes, my first thought is Roth. I always get these mixed up.
Now, both of them are going to provide you with tax-free growth. Right? Because whether you put 50 grand, Trina, after tax or 50 grand, well, I should use 6,500. Whether I put 6,500 pre-tax or after tax, once that money is in that individual retirement account, it will grow tax deferred.
Okay.
Right? Big testable distinction. This next one. Taxable distributions. Do traditional are distributions from traditional IRAs taxable? The answer is yes, and it's taxable at ordinary income tax rates. Are distributions from a Roth taxable?
No.
They are not, right? That was my story. Not every story I tell has a point, but most of them, right? That would be admit. Early withdrawal penalty. Yeah, I would definitely know they both have the early withdrawal. Remember, the early withdrawal is going to be a 10% penalty and it's 59.5. And that's very, very testable. Now, do you get to deduct your funding of your IRA against your earned income? In a traditional IRA, the answer is yes. But in a Roth, remember, the answer is no, because you're using after-tax money, right? So tax deductible contributions, tax-free distribution, ooh, that's sweet. We talked about that one.
Mm-hmm.
And that one is deductible, but the Roth is not. The Roth is not. After-tax contribution, yep, you're using after-tax. That's one of the testable distinctions. With a traditional IRA, it's a deductible contribution. And with a Roth, it's an after-tax contribution. What that really means is that you are going to owe taxes on the deposit that you made into the traditional IRA, and you're not going to owe taxes on the Roth. Required minimum distributions, again, very testable. There are required minimum distributions for almost every retirement plan except the Roth, right? And at 73 is when that is required. Roths, ooh, that's what makes them so sweet, right? You're not going to get the nasty letter and you can leave it in there as long as you want. And remember, you have to fund both of them with earned income. So if you don't have earned income, you know, so I know some people take jobs just to have earned income so they can fund, you know, retirement plans. So just because you don't have a job doesn't mean you're not rich, for example. I had a customer and he told me, I thought it was hilarious. He said, Dean, they wouldn't give me a loan. I said, they wouldn't give you a loan. I said, John, why wouldn't they give you a loan? And he said, well, they asked me if I had a job. And I said, I don't have a job. And they said, well, you don't have a job, you can't have a loan. And I said, well, John, did you tell me you don't have a job because you're rich? I mean,
yeah, that matters.
I said, who are you talking to? Like the teller? You maybe gonna go get a private banker or somebody. Okay, so now we're moving on. So those were, remember, keyword individual retirement accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, one thing you might want to be aware of when you take a job is to say, hey, what kind of retirement plan do you have available for me? I'm interested in my employer sponsored plan because, you know, I'm at a firm, right, a corporation now that has a nice one. And if I'm gonna come over to you guys, you know, I want to know what I'm going to gain or lose in terms of your employee sponsored retirement plan. Now, the most common version of an employee sponsored retirement plan is a defined contribution plan. And what we have to be able to do on the exam is contrast the traditional, I call this your grandfather's retirement plan because hardly any corporations do this anymore. Defined benefit plan, the employer assumes the investment risk. And this is where the employer says, after you work for us for, you know, 20 years, you're going to get a percentage of your base pay in healthcare for the rest of your life. Wow. So the investment risk is assumed by the employer. You know, mom is retired and I take care of mom. She lives with me here and she goes to the senior center and she has some of her friends she plays cards with who are retirees of like Chrysler, Ford, or GM, and they're getting a traditional pension check. And, you know, they spend it this month, next month, another one shows up. That's not typical anymore about how that works. Most corporations today offer you a defined contribution plan test question where the employee assumes the investment risk. I say, Trina, we're going to tell you what we're going to fund your 401k. We're going to match you dollar for dollar, maybe, maybe not, but whatever how it is. I'm just making that up. You know, the first 3% or 6%. You invest it, whatever it grows to or falls to, that's what you get. So that is the testable point. The testable point is in a defined benefit plan, the employer assumes the investment risk. And in a defined contribution plan, the employee assumes the investment risk. Now, 401ks are very popular. Those are offered by corporations. 403bs, very testable. 403bs are a qualified retirement plan, meaning you're using pre-tax. And what they typically offer you in a 403b is what's called a tax sheltered annuity, not a tax deferred annuity. Now, the test question is a couple test questions here. One test question is to recognize that that's, pre-tax money going into that thing. Everything coming out is taxable. And then the second test question is who qualifies to have a 403b. And this would be test question, employees of educational establishments college professors. By the way, be careful. It's not just the college professors, the janitors, it's the nurse, it's anybody who works at the school. Keep trick question, not students, right? People work at the school. And then the other one would be employees of nonprofits. Nonprofits are called 501cs. So very testable. I wouldn't worry about anything about profit sharing plan, except to know no profits, no sharing, or money purchase, or simple. But I would definitely know that 403b for sure. Okay, so the two basic types of accounts we have at a brokerage firm are cash accounts where you intend to pay in full, and margin accounts where you intend to pay part of the purchase price. It is very testable to know, for example, that UTMA accounts are cash accounts. So if you buy 1,000 shares at 40 in an UTMA account, that's $40,000, and that's what you're going to have to come up with. That's typical of retirement accounts. Now, in a margin account, test question, there's additional documentation required to open a margin account. One piece of documentation that's required is the credit agreement. That's where I tell you, Trina, if you want to buy 1,000 shares at 40, do you want to do this in your cash account or your margin account? You say, in my margin account. I say, well, the Federal Reserve Board, Reg T, says, Trina, that you have to come up with 20,000, and we can loan you 20,000. And so the credit agreement is where you say you understand that you're borrowing $20,000 from the broker dealer, and you owe interest, right? So that's mandatory. You got to sign the credit agreement. The interest we charge you, test question, is based on broker call. Broker call is what banks charge brokerage firms for money. And whatever the bank charges me, I'm going to charge you a little extra. I say, Trina, you need to hypothecate your securities. Hypothecation is the fancy word for pledging as collateral, securities as collateral, right? So you come visit me in Vegas and you go into a pawn shop and you say, I'd like to hypothecate my Rolex. That just means you want to pledge it as collateral, right? The cop pulls you over, he says, you have the pink slip. I say, no, officer, I do not. I have pledged the car to the bank. I've hypothecated it to the bank for the loan. And if I don't make my car loan payments, they're going to come repossess the thing, right? So same thing here in a margin account. If you don't meet your responsibilities, we're going to sell you out. So very testable. That means that your securities are going to be in street name, the name of the broker dealer. And that's important because, now if it's a cash account, you have a choice about that. And even a cash account, I'd say, hey, Trina, why don't you put it in street name? Our life will be so much easier operationally if your securities are in street name. But in a margin account, you have no choice. Now, very testable. These first two documents are mandatory. These first two documents, let me get a different color, are mandatory. And what I mean by that is if you don't sign these documents, you're no margin account for you. On this next one, I say, Trina, we have other customers who wish to short securities. Would it be okay if I lend my customers your securities? And you say, well, gee, Steve, I don't think it's in my best interest to be lending my securities, do people want to go short? I say it's not in your best interest. And that's why test question, the loan consent form is optional. That is indeed a test question. The idea that this part is optional. The first two are mandatory. That last one is optional. So very testable. So we're talking about various types of accounts. And one thing that's very testable is we said that Reg T is what the Federal Reserve Board says we can and can't lend money on. Prior to 1934, Trina, we as broker dealers were in charge of credit extension to our customers. And that was called the Roaring 20s. You give me 10 grand, I loan you 90 grand to buy securities. Everybody made a lot of money. At the end of the Roaring 20s, there was a crash. And I'd loan you money to buy anything. So 34, we said, well, maybe broker dealers aren't the best decision makers. And so we gave it to the Federal Reserve Board. It's called Regulation T. As a test taker, I wouldn't worry about things you can buy on margin. The test question is not the things you can buy on margin. The test question is the things you cannot buy on margin. The two high risk ones are options and new issues. Those are the two big ones. It's considered a new issue. How many days? You know how many days from the effective date it's considered a new issue?
Is it 20? Oh, no.
It's 30 days. So be careful on that one. So for example, you can't purchase an open-end mutual fund on margin because an open-end mutual fund is a new issue. But if you've owned it for 30 days, then you can deposit as collateral. Now, if you call me and say, hey, Dean, this company went public a while back and I missed the IPO allocation, I wasn't able to buy in the primary market. So I'd like you to step into the secondary market and buy it for me there. Pick me up 1,000 shares at 40 in the secondary market. I say, Trina, how long ago did it go public? And you say, it doesn't matter. I say, it does, Trina. You say 2 weeks ago. I go, sorry, I can't do it in your margin account. You say 6 weeks ago. I go, not a problem. Now, another thing to be able to do is contrast an open-end mutual fund that cannot be purchased on margin with an ETF that can. So, one of the advantages that ETFs have is you can buy them on margin, right? So that's something you can't do with an open-end mutual fund. I call this stupid but testable. Stupid but testable. So whenever you get a phraseology on your exam, it says initial transaction and a margin account.
Oh, goodness.
You go, oh my God, I bet it's that $2,000 trick.
Yes.
Right. So this is stupid but testable. I don't know why it's on every exam. It's on the SIE, it's on the Series 7, it's on the Series 10, it's on the Series 24. For the life of me, I don't know why they find this to be something to torment test takers on. So there's 3 versions of this trick on your exam. One of the versions is there is no trick. So I call you up and I say, hey, Trina, my recommendation is that we buy 100 shares at 15. You say, well, Dean, that sounds like a wonderful idea. Let's open up a new account and let's buy 100 shares at 15. I know how margin accounts work. I'll send you $750. I said, well, Trina, if you had an established margin account with me, you would be correct. But we have a FINRA minimum of $2,000. And you say, well, I'll send you $2,000. I said, well, why would you want to send me $2,000 to buy $1,500 worth of securities? So the first version of this trick, stupid but testable, is somebody in a new account buys less than $2,000, in which case they pay in full. Second version of the trick. You say, Dean, sounds like a wonderful idea. Let's open a new account. Let's buy 100 shares at 30 as our initial transaction. I know how margin accounts work. I'll send you $1,500. I said, well, now, Trina, if you had an established account with me, that would be correct. But FINRA has a $2,000 minimum. So the second version of the trick is between $2,000 and $4,000. The customer pays $2,000. Stupid, but testable. Okay, last version of the trick. There is no trick. You say, Dean, let's open a new account. Let's buy 100 shares at 50. I know the $2,000 minimum for a new account. I'll send you $2,000. I go, no, Trina. Half of $5,000 is $2,500. So once we go past $4,000, it's just going to be 50%. Right? Stupid, but testable. Let me show you an example of this. This is very much on the test. Right? So what is the required deposit? Here's every version of this trick on your exam. By the way, you won't get all three of them, but I think you'll get at least one of these. A customer buys 200 shares at 9. So I go, okay, well, that's 200 shares at 9 is $1,800. And so we're going to have to come up with 1,800. So remember, we said if it's less than 2,000 or less, I should say, you pay in full. Right? Remember, this is only for a new account here. Customer buys 100 shares at 30. So between $2,000 and $4,000, we're going to pay $2,000. Right? And then we buy 100 shares at 50. Once we go past 4, it's just like any other margin account. There's no trick in play is the way I think of that. So by way of review, 2,000 or less, we pay in full. $2,000 to $4,000, we pay $2,000. Past 4, we just pay 50%. Okay, so the minimum equity in a margin account, the house requirement can always be more stringent. Trina, boy, I wouldn't want to be working at TD Ameritrade and Schwab as they merge because, TD Ameritrade and Schwab have different margin requirements. The house requirements of Schwab are much higher than TD Ameritrade. And now they're going to be calling customers at TD Ameritrade and say, hey, Trina, I got some bad news for you. The house requirement at Schwab is X. So none of us can ever have any rule that's less stringent than the minimum, but we can certainly have rules that are more stringent, right? So a customer equity, I would know that is 25% long. So at all times, you got to have 25% of the market value long in equity. I definitely know that memory work. And I even know short is going to be 30. And then remember, the other thing I told you to worry about is to know that the house requirement can indeed be higher. I don't know of anybody who has a requirement that isn't higher than those. Schwab's, last time I checked, Schwab's 40. So if equity drops below the minimum, you're going to have a maintenance call, and that's due promptly. So customers get confused about that all the time too. They go, oh, maintenance call, T plus 2 plus 2. I go, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. What are you talking about, T plus 2 plus 2? And you said, well, Dean, I thought that, Reg T says customers get 2 additional days to come up with transactions, money. I said, well, no, I think you're confusing a margin call with a maintenance call. Margin call is indeed T plus 2 plus 2. Customers get 2 additional days. Oh, man, come on, Dean. We don't ever tell customers they actually get 2 additional days because we don't want to use our monies to settle their trades. But as a margin clerk, I can't bother a customer until T plus 2 plus 2 has gone by. Maintenance calls aren't margin calls, right? A margin call is for initial money. That's a different thing. So now we won't tell you what promptly is because remember your securities are in street name. And if you don't come up with the money, I'm going to sell you out, right? All right. So, broker dealers make money through transactions. And I joke, if you're getting a 663 or 763, you're an agent of a broker dealer. And that means what you do is you give people advice. You don't charge them for it. I say, hey, Trina, I think what you need is professional management, diversification, ease of ownership. I'm recommending to you a mutual fund. 663, 763, you say, Dean, what do I owe you for that advice? I say, Trina, that advice is free. And then you say, Dean, do you know where you can get a mutual fund? I go, I do. You can get a mutual fund, Trina, from my broker dealer. And that's what I'm recommending to you. And you say, well, geez, Dean, how's that work? I said, well, in the A share, there's a 4% load, Trina. And so if you invest $10,000, we're going to take $400 out of there. We're going to put $9,600 into the fund. And, the vast majority of that $400 comes back to my broker dealer. And then I get a payout. I get a percentage of that, in 50%, for example, 200. I don't have to go into the weeds like I'm doing right now in this, with you. Right. But the point is that's how most of us make on the broker dealer side money from transactions, either commissions or markups or markdowns if we're trading from inventory. Now, maybe you say, Dean, I'm uncomfortable with that business model. I said, well, Trina, what part of that are you uncomfortable with? You said, well, Dean, it sounds like, you're not going to make any money unless I do something. And I said, well, I would hope I could ethically tell you that if the answer is not to do anything, for many, many years, that was the end of that discussion.
Mhm.
But I say, hey, Trina, my broker dealer has an affiliated investment advisory company firm. And I not only have a 663, I also have a 65.
Mhm.
I don't have a 763. I also have a 763, and I also have a 65. Or I have a 766. Who cares? The numeric requirements aren't the point.
Right.
The point is we can have what's called a wrap account, where we wrap our products and services into a fee. So the vast majority of people who are taking 65s and 66s, it's because they're going to be representing a investment advisor firm, and they're going to be charging fees rather than for transactions. So fee-based trading accounts are another option. The fee covers most of all the trades in the account. It's not suitable for buy and hold. This concept is, maybe I tell you, Trina, you are a client of mine, and I tell you about a wrap account. You say, Dean, that sounds like a good deal. I say, yeah, Dean, I've done the homework, and you're better with the wrap account than paying it for the individual transaction. So that's why I'm recommending it to you. You say, let's do it. And then maybe you are also friends with another client of mine. We're all, hang out in the same kind of circles. And maybe you're at the club talking to them, and you tell about that person about the wrap account. And they call me and they say, well, Dean, how come you shared that with Trina? You didn't share it with me. I said, I didn't share it with you because I did the homework on your account, and you're better just paying a la carte. In other words, you would be paying us more if I put you in the wrap account than what you're paying presently by just, paying me whenever you do transactions. So needless to say, we have to make the recommendation in whatever's in the client's best interest, right? I mean, I consider those kind of be layups on the test. Right? I mean, don't lie, cheat, or steal, right? So those kind of questions. Now, solicited is my idea. Unsolicited means it's the customer's idea. Right. So we're going to mark the order ticket solicited or unsolicited. By the way, I might have discretion. And even if I have discretion, maybe I'm not comfortable taking it. And I say, hey, Trina, even though I have discretion, I'd like to get your permission to do this. Or maybe I have to get your permission. Maybe it's, for example, I'm a Merrill broker and I want you to buy Bank of America stock. And I call you and say, Trina, have you been following the bromance between Brian Moynihan, our CEO, and Warren Buffett? Talk about a bromance, man. I think you should buy 1,000 shares of Merrill Lynch. And you say, well, Dean, I don't know why you're bothering me. You have discretionary authority on my account. If you think I should own 1,000 shares of Merrill Lynch, I said, well, I'm not allowed to use my discretionary authority, Trina, when there's a control relationship. And so I'm going to need your permission to proceed. Now, that would be marked solicited, discretion not exercised, meaning that was my idea. Now, if I'm a Merrill broker and you just call me out of the blue and say, hey, Dean, I just saw that Mr. Buffett, crossed 10% ownership in Bank of America, and I want some to buy me 1,000 B of A. That's unsolicited. That was not my idea. Now, what we're looking for in these questions, very testable, are the 3 A's about whether or not we need a discretionary account or not. The 3 A's. We do not need discretionary authority, very testable, to make decisions about time and price. So that does not require discretionary authority. And again, the last game we're going to play in our coaching call tonight is this one. We're going to go through some orders and we're going to decide whether or not we need to have discretionary authority. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to go through and we're going to look and see, is the action present, buy or sell? Is the asset present, which security to buy or sell? And the quantity, the amount. If those 3 A's are present when we play this game, we're going to say not discretionary. If 1, 2, or 3 of the A's are missing, then we're going to say discretionary. Okay. All right. So just give you an example. Trina, buy me 10,000 shares of B of A today at whatever time and price you think looks good. Buy 10,000 shares B of A. That is not a discretionary order. In fact, I might say, Trina, buy 10,000 shares of Bank of America today, market not held. Market not held. Now I'm telling you, don't tell the other people in the auction that you're holding, do I have on my order, do it at whatever time and price you think looks good. You said, well, Dean, that's our floor broker. And I said, yeah, I get it. It's your floor broker. I trust your floor broker to give me some good execution. Time and price isn't discretionary authority. Time and price is about execution. And I can make decisions about time and price without discretionary authority. And then we talked about a wrap account already. We talked about a wrap account. We wrap our products. By the way, the test question about a wrap account, besides needing the proper registration, is that we have to have a brochure for the wrap account that tells the customer what's included in the wrap fee and what's excluded. Now, for example, it doesn't include, insurance, probably not. Right. So, what is going to be how many research reports you get, or how much, how many trades you get, whatever the case may be.
Okay.
All right. The last game we're going to play this evening in your coaching call. So again, kind of like our other games we played. By the way, if you're watching the replay, then, hit pause and see how you do as compared to Trina and Dean. Okay. The market is falling. First thing I tell test takers is who cares? So they're very good on the test on, giving you all kinds of information that isn't pertinent.
Mhm.
So, one thing we might want to do is just read it for context and say, hey, what are they asking? We're all going to die. Sell everything. Okay, well, let's go through the A's. Action, you told me to sell.
I'm gonna sell
You told me the asset, everything.
everything.
And that includes the quantity. So now in the real world, good news, you get to leave the testing world after you pass. I'm stuck here permanently, no wonder I'm demented. But in the real world, I'd probably say, Trina, I'd take a deep breath. Is that really what we want to do? I mean, I don't think we want to panic. All right, let's try our next one. This correction is nerve-wracking. Who cares? Please liquidate. Okay, so there's the action. So the weaker positions. What?
Okay. I was hoping I was thinking right. Okay.
Right. So weaker positions, that's not the asset. I say, hey, Trina, why don't we right now just decide what the weaker positions are?
Mm.
So that would be discretion if I do that, because one of the A's is missing. All right, we're working through the 3 A's. Let's look at our next one. Buy, there's the action. 100 shares, there's the amount. Best retailer available. The asset is missing. And if one or two or any of those A's are missing, then it is a discretionary order. And the point, remember, the topic of our coaching call is types of accounts. And that means if you're going to accept that order, you need to have a discretionary account in place. And that requires written approval prior to your first transaction by your principal, right? So that's the point. All right, let's try the next one. So there's the action. So all the shares, there's the amount. And my account price below 10, there's the assets.
Okay.
Right? So the 3 A's are present. And so that's not discretionary. Right? So the 3 A's is the way we get this right.
Mhm.
All right, let's look at our next one. Sell, there's the action. Half the shares, there's the amount. Buy stuff, there's the asset. The
Okay.
3 A's are present. So that order is what?
Not just
Discretionary. Okay, let's do our last one here. I need 100,000 for a new fishing boat. Sell, there's the action, sell. Sell securities for my account to raise the cash. So I have this amount and I have the action. Say about half from my stocks and half from my bonds. Well, no, I can't make a decision about half of the bonds, which bonds and which stocks, unless I have discretionary authority on your account.
too broad. Okay.
Yeah, right. Half from stocks and half from bonds. Which stocks, which bonds? All right, let's finish up with some practice questions here. 3 brothers open a joint account instructing you that if they die, they want the cash and securities in the account to go to the remaining parties to the account. The account should be opened as, so the decedent share is going to the surviving parties. So which type of account, customer account, is that?
I remember getting a question like this. Okay, so my first thought was D,
Ooh, but remember, transfer on death would be an individual.
but that's individual, but that was my first thought.
Okay, well, I like you talking out loud, because that's part of what we got to do is as your coach, right? I got to know what's going on in your brain housing group to be able to be helpful. So I always like it when people tell me what they're thinking. I will tell you that is not correct. I won't be at your exam. I do have people tell me, Trina, though they hear my voice at the exam. I hope it's a good voice. You know, sometimes people miss things and they go, eh. That's the rudest thing I've ever heard, Dean. You know, so I won't give you the eh.
I will remember it though, so that's good. Okay, C.
No, it's going to be the joint tenants with rights or survivorship, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So remember, tenants in common, the decedent share would go to their estate or beneficiary.
So it can be more than two people.
It can.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where I joke, you know, shout out to Kaplan. Kaplan gives me permission to use their content. And if you don't have a Kaplan Q Bank, and I got to get my commercial with my Guru 10 discount code, you can get it for about $60 if it's a 7, cheaper if it's an SIE. But now that I gave the commercial, I would tell you that Kaplan jerks are bigger jerks than the real jerks.
Okay.
So Kaplan's trying to stretch your mind. I get you. So Kaplan's got sometimes what I call gotcha questions.
Okay.
So you thought, you know what? You know, sometimes that can be counterproductive. But good news is you want to have questions that are a little tougher. Exam. All right, another one. All the following are benefits of a traditional individual retirement account, except. All of them except.
May be tax deductible. No penalty is charged for going to the funds may be withdrawn without paying for certain exemptions.
So basically what these except questions are pretty tricky. So they're saying that 3 of these things are a good thing. And 1 of these things is a bad thing.
Right. A is
good. Bueno.
Yes.
B is bueno.
Is good. C, no penalty is charged for failing to withdraw funds after 73. No.
There you go. That's exactly. So on those except questions, you got to be kind of really careful about what they're asking. A hypothecation agreement would best described as a loan consent form which gives the permission to the firm. No. A written disclosure of the terms of credit. No, that's the credit agreement. B is the credit agreement. A is the loan consent form, which is optional. C, a partnership agreement stating which of the partners can make transactions on a partnership account. No. A contract allowing the securities to be pledged for loan. Ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding. All right. Well, hoo-hoo. So I hope you found that coaching call helpful for your study efforts. Like I say, they're usually 30-minute calls, but you know, I wanted to make sure we got the customer count that you wanted to talk about done. Anything else that you would like to cover into today's coaching call before we call it done? No, that was great. I appreciate you so much. That helped a lot. I'll see you hopefully next Tuesday on the live. I would tell you there is a rule. The rule, Trina, this is courtesy of Erica, who's one of our loyal folks, that you can't win twice. Okay. So okay. So that means next Tuesday when we do the drawing, you can put it in there, but if your name comes up, then we got to redraw. So okay. But like I say, and there's plenty. I think I was checking your email at Munis. There's lots of stuff on the channel on Munis. I forget what was the other thing you wanted to discuss. Taxation. Taxation. Okay. So if you don't win next week, you win the next week. We can do that, and we'll get that done for you. There's also taxation available on the channel as well. Okay. Thank you. All right. Remember, inch by inch, your exam's a cinch. Yard by yard, your exam is hard. And I'll see you next Tuesday. All right. See you then. Bye.